Welcome back for another episode on the Elevate Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Eleana, and today we have a special episode because this episode actually came from one of you that sent me a DM asking for specific advice, questions related to motherhood and postpartum. And I am all here for that. And I realized that although I've shared bits and pieces of my motherhood journey, we need to dive into it a bit more because there's so many of us that are having children, currently pregnant, currently in the postpartum phase. I mean, I wasn't there too long ago. My son is just now about to turn 20 months old, which is just over a year and a half. And I'm in it right there with you guys. And so it's such an important part of our life that doesn't get enough light and support and real conversation on what is actually happening in our world and in our bodies, and how are we managing to do all the things that light us up and we're passionate about and we're driven about and we're ambitious about, while being that present mother, that present spouse, because it's not talked about enough. We feel like we live in a society where we have to choose between one or the other, and something's got to give, which, yes, all things, in order to achieve everything, something has to give in between, but we're not going to sacrifice, our career or the kind of mother we want to be. So, I have very specific questions here that I'm going to be answering. And I want to open this up. If you have any questions that you have running through your thoughts or you want me to answer on this show, please send me a DM at Elevate with Eliana, and I would love to bring them to the podcast next. And share any of the resources that I've come across that have been very helpful for me. So let's dive in. Now, we're going to be kind of fast forwarding here right to, what was your newborn must haves, things that you felt were specifically important to have. From there, we're going to talk about the things that my spouse and I did prior to birth regarding like the best ways for him to support me during labor and postpartum as well. Then we're also going to dive into the emotional health of postpartum. What did I do or not do that was beneficial? And last but not least, how did I manage to completely slow down, let my body heal, and join the newborn phase while still being career driven and all of those things? So that's just going to give you a little insight on what we're going to be talking about here. And I find all of these questions to be so important. Because again, without the proper support, you're going in blind. And being a mom, it's a lifelong commitment. I mean, labor in itself is a marathon, but then afterwards, when you have your baby, that is a marathon. It forever. We will forever be students of motherhood, learning and applying just as much as our children are learning from us. We are as well. And it's a beautiful process. It is the most challenging. Of course, every mother tells you it's the hardest job in the world, but the most rewarding. And it's true. It is the hardest job. And I think that's because you're being tested and you're being challenged, and your rubber band, right? Your hair tie that fits around your wrist is being expanded to the point where it's probably going to break, and you're going to need a bigger hair tie to encompass the amount of capacity that you now have to hold and be able to endure and learn how to manage your own triggers, learn the wounds inside of you that are being exposed, that you may have never known were there, that were been dormant this whole time simply because nothing was triggering them. And so, coming from someone who is in this, who's experiencing it, I'll also share how I've been able to really recognize that and reflect upon expanding that capacity, because I've had moments where, you know, gosh, it's so hard. And then you have to remind yourself, Your child picked you to be their mother because you were the one that they wanted. And vice versa, you picked your child as well because you knew that their soul was also the one for you in your life to each help you grow, evolve in this life, right? That we've all chosen to be in and be here for. So, number one, what were a couple of must haves for the newborn phase that helped a lot? And it's never the things that we put on our registry. It's really not. Um, but I'll tell you, for me, it honestly came down to the breastfeeding portion of the newborn phase because that's 80% of it. Literally, your baby is going to be on you if you're choosing to nurse, okay? 80% of the time. That's all there is to it. So, for me, I found that the Haka system was very helpful, specifically the like Haka ladybug, and the Haka, uh, like suction one, so that you could collect all of the milk droppings that are coming from you and be able to use that for, a different feeding and a bottle feeding, perhaps, if you're going to do both, which I did choose to do. Perhaps for my next baby, I would choose to hold off on pumping specifically and bottle feeding maybe a little later. But I did start pumping and using my droppings from the Haka early on, so that my husband could assist, which was what I chose to do. And it was honestly, very helpful being a new mom, being overwhelmed, not having any support, which we're going to get to that part in a moment. But all things breastfeeding related were the essentials during this time. Um, Nipple butter, I use nipple butter all the time. Your nipples will be very sore, okay? Like very sore, and they will not be feeling great for the first several weeks. So you definitely want to invest in some nipple butters. Um, a portable changing pad. Okay. This was very helpful because I did not have a downstairs. We have an upstairs and downstairs in our home. And I did not have a downstairs changing area. I only had one upstairs in his nursery. So creating that secondary station or a portable changing pad, honestly, that was the easiest thing to do. Just whip it out and put him anywhere and or her and change him there. That was very useful. Um, and the two other things that were very helpful, well, three. One, adult diapers. You're going to be going through it. There's no shame. Adult diapers, they are your friend during this very sacred time where your body is still healing. You want to be extremely comfortable. The other thing that I found to be helpful during this beginning time where you really want to be tracking their amount of feedings, their amount of poops, um, the time that they're sleeping, all of these things to give yourself a bit of an awareness on what's working, what's not working. And it helps take the thinking out of, okay, when was the last feeding? How many pees and poops in the day? How many ounces of milk? It just takes the thinking out. So I found a app, like a newborn baby app that helped me track all of those things. And again, not every mom has to do that, but I found it to be super helpful because I'm a visual person. The less I have to think about and the more I can just visually see on paper or in an app, the easier it is for me to see the patterns and be able to then plan the afternoon or the next day and to see like, okay, so for the last 3 days, he's been sleeping from 1 to 3 p.m. Awesome. So it just gives you a bit of that awareness. And we eventually did put him on a sleep schedule. By the time he was about, I think, 7 to 8 weeks old, I began um, putting him to bed at the same time every evening. And that's still true to this day. So, yes, I did go that route. And it was a huge blessing for us because now he automatically has that internal clock for bedtime. So, it's very helpful. So, yeah, that was extremely helpful to see the routine. And I probably used that for just a couple of months. At some point, we stopped using it because you now know the routine. It's pretty consistent. But in the newborn time, there is no routine. There is no concept of day or night. They just do. And it just kind of helped me have something on paper to go by, right? Um, and then the last one was a sound machine, which I still use today. So it's been a very good investment. And for them, the only sounds that they know are the sounds and the whooshings and the muffledness and the white noise that's coming from your womb. And of course, the vibrations of your voice. So I would always put the sound machine on, and even have a Spotify playlist of like womb music, which there is a thing for that. And that was also very helpful because it's what calms them. It's what they know. It's familiar. For 10 months, if you're full term at 40 weeks, that's 10 months in the womb. That's all they know. And so to come out and to hear nothing or to hear all these other sounds, it's foreign to them. So to have that familiarity already set in place for them, it did help a lot for soothing, for sleeping, for just relaxation, for them to feel like, okay, this feels familiar, right? So yeah, those were my top essentials during that really sacred time in the newborn phase. So all the things for breastfeeding care, right? Um, the sound machine, the app for tracking feedings and adult diapers, and of course, the portable changing pad, my top things. Probably not your traditional things that you would hear, but it's what worked during that time. Okay, moving on to the things that my husband and I discussed prior to birth regarding the best ways for him to support me during labor and then postpartum as well. I freaking love these questions. This is the real stuff. Like what did you guys do? Especially me being a first time parent. My husband actually has two other boys, so he's been a dad for the last 25 years. His son's oldest is 25, but he was a kid at that point. He was 19 turning 20. He was working three jobs, doing the do, handling his infant on the weekends, and then he went into the army and left to be in the military. So although he has two boys and his other son is 12, about to turn 13, and he was there for a good part of his life as well, he had never been there for either of his sons' birth, being deployed for both of his births. So we were going through this for the first time together, even though he was a parent already. And it was really special because I didn't think I would have met someone and fallen in love and married someone who already had kids. So to have had this part of the experience going through together for the first time was really special for both him and I. And at this point in his life, now that he's not in the military, he was actually there for the entire pregnancy, the entire labor, birth, and postpartum. So very special for us. And I'm very fortunate to have had that with him. Um, what we discussed very early on. I actually hired one of my very good friends. She's a doula. If you want to hear more all about that experience, I actually had her on the podcast and we talked about the journey from maiden to motherhood and what that transformation for us as women is like, going from a maiden, a woman who, is in her authority and her righteousness, doing, things to fulfill herself and her life spontaneously, to then going into motherhood. You're no longer a maiden anymore. You've now matured. You've gone through this evolution. So I had her on, and we talked all about that. She's a very in-depth coach regarding, assisting women going through that period of transformation and really diving into the relationship that you had with your mother and what ideas and visions you have around motherhood based on the examples we were given. It's phenomenal. Like, so blessed to have had her in my circle during that time. And so because I had her in my corner, I already knew, and I was discussing with her the kind of birth that I wanted. And that was natural, no to very little intervention. And of course, I had to ensure that my husband was on board with that and making sure that he understood the kind of support that I needed to go along for that vision to come to life. And he was also on board with that. We both believe in the same things as far as medications go and wanting little intervention as possible. His only request was wanting me to deliver in a hospital. And honestly, I was okay with that. I had nothing against it. It wasn't my first preference. However, uh, I was more than willing to accommodate for that because I didn't see anything wrong with it. As long as I knew what was going to be presented to me going into that situation, so I could best make the decisions for our family. Because what happens going into a hospital setting, especially if you're someone who wants little intervention, they're going to intervene and push all these things onto you because you are in their environment. You lose a sense of your authority and autonomy because now you have their authority figures coming over you and essentially overriding everything to them. But that's actually not the case. You do still have your own power that you can take back in the conversation there. So that's what the doula helped me with after him and I decided, okay, this is the kind of birth we want. This is where we're going to be having it. So now how do we ensure that we're going to achieve the kind of birth we want in that environment? Knowing all the things a hospital is going to present upon arrival, and of course, after the baby is born. So because I did that work going into it, it helped take out a lot of the thinking upon arriving. Because when we arrived, I didn't know it at the time, but I was essentially in labor, full blown, just get me on the table. I couldn't even sign my name properly. I didn't even know where my ID was. It was like, it's go time. So the fact that I already knew ahead of time all the things that I was signing to, I didn't have to sit there and read it for 15, 20 minutes and have to look over it and, discuss with him, oh, do we want to do this? What does this mean? What implications will that have on the baby? Is that necessary? No, it was yes, no, sign, done. Get me on this table. We're having this baby. So I share that because don't underestimate doing the research and educating yourself ahead of time. The last thing you want is to be in premature labor or in labor when the time comes and not know all the things that are going to be presented and have to make decisions on the fly because you just got to have this baby, right? So that was very important. Coming out of the labor, well, let me tell you about the labor in particular. So because this was his first labor experience, he himself didn't really know what to do. Luckily, I did a lot of work to achieve a natural unmedicated labor, which I did have. And for me, it was utilizing the power of my breath. And I actually did an episode talking about my birth story and how I got to that and all the things I did. So definitely scroll back and find that episode and listen to it. But for my husband and the support he gave me during labor, I just wanted his hand on my shoulder and his presence there with me. Both my hands were on my back to support the intensity of my contractions. So I actually did not want him to hold my hand because my hands were on my back supporting my contractions. I just wanted his hand on my shoulder, and that made me feel his presence, made me feel his support, his love, and everything I needed to get through that experience. Now, going into postpartum, we were very blessed that he was able to get paternity leave. We did not have any support regarding family, aunts, uncles, cousins. Yes, we have friends, and they were very helpful and supportive during this time with meal delivery, bringing us dinners, takeouts, offering to come over and watch the baby so I could go get my nails done or my hair cut, or go grocery shopping, like very basic things, which when you have the baby, you will understand. Um, so we did have that, right? But we didn't have any family to like be there with us. So he was my main support. And honestly was so helpful. Now, they can help you to an extent because if you're choosing to breastfeed, it's just you and baby majority of the time. However, there's so many things in the background a spouse can do to assist you. And I have a list here actually of all the things that he did to assist me. And that was helping to burp the baby after a feeding, complete body exercises after a feeding. So you're going to want to like move their legs, their arms, tummy time as that, time approaches for them to do tummy time, um, ensuring that you have the essentials when you're feeding, like your little station of snacks, water. You're going to be so thirsty if you're breastfeeding. Your phone is charged, a blanket, your haka, keeping your breast pump charged if you're going to be pumping, your bottles clean if you're going to be feeding with the bottle. Then of course helping feed the baby if he's being bottle fed, watching the baby for you so you can go to the grocery store or do your nails, or whatever else you need for yourself to go and do. Hold the baby while you make dinner, or you can go shower, or you can, just do something for yourself around the house. And then vice versa, him picking up, the laundry for that period of time, or the dinner or the dishes, whatever chores you have. If you don't have somebody that's going to be assisting you, whether it's, your mom, mother-in-law, friend, sister, cousin, or a housekeeper, those are all the ways your spouse can really support you during this time if they aren't already. And then obviously diaper changes, and then help putting the baby to sleep. So do not underestimate all of the things in the background that they can be doing to assist. And that was really crucial. The other part that we played around with, because I did choose to pump and bottle feed, was him doing some of the nightly feedings. And then we played around with that, whether it was like the 2 a.m. feeding or the 6 a.m. feeding. We just kind of played around with that for a bit of time. And that was helpful for me to get that extra couple of hours of sleep in during that time. Okay, moving on to my emotional health during postpartum. What did I do or not do that I thought was beneficial? Such a good question. For my emotional health, I just went at my own pace. I cleared my calendar. I was on maternity leave for 12 weeks. However, I took leave 2 weeks before he came, thinking he'd come early. So there was that. And I essentially went back to work when he was 10 weeks old. For my emotional health, I slowed down. I didn't rush to get back into the swing of things. I honored this sacred time. I really honored it. And I honored it by choosing to be home. Now, in our culture, in the Orthodox culture, we have what's called like the 40-day blessing, like that 40-day, it's also called the fourth trimester, and just that sacred time where a mother and a baby typically stay home. They don't go outings, they don't really go out to places. And intuitively, I honestly wanted to do that. I didn't want to be out and about. I wasn't my best. I'm still healing. I am tired. I see so many moms and I give them so much praise for being out and about with their newborn or doing stuff already and being in the full swing of things. And that just wasn't me. I didn't feel called to do that. I honestly don't even understand how other women can do that when we were so exhausted as we are. But that was the best thing I could have ever done for myself, was just listening to my intuition and asking myself, how do I want to spend this time? And I can look back and honestly say I did everything I wanted to do. And I don't have any regrets during that time. Like, I was so happy by just being with my baby, not feeling the need to go work out, exercise, go for my stroller walks until I was ready to go for a stroller walk. I just slowed down and it was so beautiful. The other thing I did that was extremely rewarding as well was setting boundaries with family. Anytime there's a new, um, a new component, a new dynamic coming into your family, especially a baby, everyone's going to want to either be involved or not show up. And it's going to create more drama, or things are just not going to be happening the way you want them to happen to. It's going to set unrealistic expectations. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be conflict at a time when you just need to focus on you and your baby. People do not need to be adding more stress into your life. You need to keep your cortisol down so that your oxytocin and your pitocin can remain high. So that, again, if you're breastfeeding, those hormones are what produces breast milk. So if you're experiencing stress in any form, you're not going to be producing as much milk, which is why for me, when I went back to work, my milk dried up within 4 weeks' time. It was pretty instant. Not to say that that would happen for anyone else or for you, but it's what happened for me. So I ended up setting boundaries within the first week after we had our son with family, particularly the ones that I knew were going to be problematic and that, we haven't had the best relationship in the past, and now is not the time to start when it's already pretty rocky and I have a lot going on. So I ended up setting boundaries during that time, relinquishing expectation, obligations, responsibility of how they needed to show up or not show up. I just completely relinquished it all and allowed myself to have a stress-free postpartum fourth trimester experience by saying, right now, we are healthy, happy, loved, supported, and good, right? And we will be loving you from afar. And that just freed up so much mental space. There was no people pleasing of, oh, needing to please, this family member or that family member, or them wanting to come over and then this happening. None of that. No, just I will not be doing that. That's not the precedence I will be setting going into motherhood. So that was probably between honoring intuitively how I wanted to spend my time in the fourth trimester and with who, the two most important things you can do for your emotional health. And the last part of our questions here, how did I manage the need to completely slow down, heal my body, and enjoy newborn life as someone, and this is coming from the woman who asked me the question, like me, who's very career driven and used to being productive and busy all the time. So I love this question. I think part of it I've answered already with the other questions, but the part of us that is ambitious, driven, motivated, to have a career, be successful, create something, grow, all of those things do not stop when you become a mom. If anything, it gives you that much more ambition and drive, but you also now are viewing your time as that much more valuable, that much more sacred. The things you are going to do are going to be much more pointed and targeted because you're not going to want to take time away from your child. Intuitively, instinctively, you're going to want to be home with your baby. And I recall, going back to work after 10 weeks, he was 10 weeks old. It was my 12-week mark going back. And luckily I did work from home and I have that remote schedule. And I had someone that came and watched my son for me at home. So I could still pop in and see him and hug him during the day throughout my meetings. Obviously, it's not the same. There were quite a few times when I had to leave and go to meetings, events, and outings that I missed certain milestones. And eventually, after a short period of time, as I mentioned, maybe about 4 to 6 weeks, my milk dried up. Why? Because one, my stress was high, and two, the baby stopped associating feeding with me, given that I couldn't always be available to feed him myself. And so he got accustomed to the bottle and no longer associated food with me. So we had a very short-lived breastfeeding journey when I intended it to be much, much longer. So that was very hard to deal with. And then, of course, the natural feeling of someone else watching your baby, you know, um, uh, like parenting your child or being there with them and you're not, very normal, very natural. Obviously, if you're a two working income-based household, it is what it is. I know other families, mothers take that step back 100%, whatever the case is. But I'm here to tell you that you can have it all. And every part of our life has a season to it. And everything is temporary. The newborn phase is temporary. If you choose to, do all the things and please everybody else, you're going to regret looking back and not holding that time as sacred for you and your baby, right? It's just natural. So think ahead of time on what you would regret looking back and not making those decisions for you or your family in these critical years. So what ended up happening for me professionally, after about 6 months returning from maternity leave, I was feeling such a pull in wanting to create more time in my day with my child. Because when you work in corporate, it's a 9 to 5. And if you're like me, I chose to put my son at 7 o'clock to sleep at night. So that means from 5 to 7, that was the time I got with my little one and the first hour of the day before I started work. And to me, that wasn't the experience of motherhood I wanted. Now, I also didn't want it to conflict with me growing professionally. But for me personally, working in a company wasn't my long-term goal. So I already knew that. I've known that about myself for a very long time. And motherhood was that opportunity for me to claim back my time. And my husband and I ended up creating a business of our own about 6 months later. We're now almost coming up on 6 months of the start of that business. Okay. So just give you a little rundown on the timeline here. 6 months into my going back to work, I felt the need to pull back. 6 months later, we started our business. I always knew I wanted to have our own company. And now we're 6 months after that period almost. My son ended up going to daycare at a year old. Why? Because I knew that A, I wanted to invest in continuing to grow professionally. B, he was showing signs of needing the extra activity and the socialization. And so he gets that for him, and I get what I need for me. I've also gained back hours in the day with him. So it was a win-win situation. Now, everyone's lifestyle and your desires and the goals that you have in place are going to look different. You have to find what's going to work for you and fulfill you. Because I'll tell you, I am so fulfilled and I'm so happy and I feel so in flow with my schedule. I get to be my career-driven self from the time I drop off my son to school till early afternoon. And then I get to be mom the rest of my day. From 3 to 7, I get to be mom. And I do give my son that undivided attention where we're doing an activity together. I do have dinner most of the time cooked in advance, or at least 75% of the way through, so that I'm not taking an hour to cook or when I can spend that time with him. So all to say that you have to figure out what's going to work for you. I recall prior to having my son, I'm going to go back and it's going to be no problem. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And the truth be told, you will change after you become a mom. It's just natural. Your desires will change. The things you thought you wanted will change at the time of when you thought you wanted them, because you will never get this sacred time back with your child. These early developmental years from 0 to 7, most importantly from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, They are taking in so much, and you're going to want to be part of that in whatever way you can be, while of course honoring the other parts of you that are equally as important. So everything has a time and a place. Motherhood has taught me a lot about time management and really investing in the people, in the companies, in the meetings, in the events that are going to yield something in return, so that it equates to the value as if it was me being home and spending that sacred time with my child. So if I'm going to leave to go somewhere now, it has to be for a very good reason that is bringing something in return. Otherwise, I would have rather been home or spending that time with my family. So I hope that makes sense and gives you some peace that, okay, it's going to be a shift. You're going to have a shift. You're going to feel a pull, and it's natural to feel that pull of, I'd rather be spending my time here. I'd rather be doing that. And that's going to give you the opportunity to explore this new era of you. Because as I said in the beginning, you're going from maiden to motherhood. You are literally going through a transformation, and you will be different coming out on the other side. So you're going to be learning all about this new part of you, this new version of you, as you go through motherhood, and learning what's important to me now, and how do I orient my life in the proper way of these things that prioritize what's now important to me. And that's going to give you the peace and the balance that you're looking for. As you learn about this new part of you, you're going to begin to orient your life around those priorities. When those priorities are out of whack, if you haven't identified them yet, you're going to feel out of balance. Okay. So you have to then relearn yourself, learn what are your now priorities. What are the priorities to me now? And organize your life around that, even if it means rearranging, or working with your boss and discussing, hey, I need a little bit more time back. How can we adjust my schedule? Or, if you're in a sales role and you're attending networking events all the time, or conferences, or whatever that looks like, can you shift those happy hours to daytime meetings or breakfasts or lunches? So that you are home in the evenings to put your child to bed, because you are a new mom, right? Unless you have someone there around the clock, or your spouse or a family member, to pick up that slack. Again, I didn't have that luxury. So that was a very real aspect of what I was doing before. Going into it for the second time, whenever that time comes, I now have the nanny that we worked with, who we've built a very tight bond with, that I have her in our corner now to assist me for the next, baby that comes along. At that time, when I first had my son, we didn't have anybody that we knew well enough to be there with us. So, that could be another part in finding people that you can align yourself with as a caregiver, if you're not going to be going the daycare route to begin with from now, so that you can build those relationships with when that time comes for you. Super important. And outside of the career, as a new mom, you're going to be going through, of course, the body image differences and wanting your pre-baby body back. It's very normal. I have always been a very active individual. I've been into fitness for about 10 years now. I've gone through different stages of fitness. I've ran track in high school. So I'm someone who lives a relatively healthy lifestyle. I love to cook at home and and drink a ton of water. I drank a gallon of water a day when I was pregnant. Like, I did all those things, but I knew that the point isn't to bounce back. I didn't want that. I wanted to just honor this period of time, because I knew it was temporary. I have my whole life to get back into working out, but for right now, this is what I want to do. I want to sit here with my son. I want to go for a walk because I feel ready to, and I want to enjoy it because of the outdoors, not because I'm looking to get back my abs or my toned body or my pre-baby weight. I honestly took the first 6 months and did just that because I knew it was temporary. It was a conscious choice. There was no guilt involved. Um, and I'm so happy that I gave myself that. I know every woman struggles differently with this, but it was so beautiful. If you can give yourself that opportunity to just be and not worry about what you're going to look like right away afterwards or how quickly you're going to drop that weight. I'll tell you, breastfeeding is designed to actually speed up your metabolism because you are constantly producing food for your baby. That creates an abundance of energy and calorie burning in your body, which is why you will be extremely hungry. And do not be afraid to eat. Your body needs the calories in order to produce milk, in order to feed your baby. I actually looked this up and it was about, I believe, 10 calories per ounce of milk that your baby drinks. And your baby will drink maybe, let's say 24 ounces in a day at one point, and then 6 ounces per feeding 4 times a day. Yeah, 24 or so or more. So you're going to be burning an additional, let's say 200 to 400 calories per day just from breastfeeding, just from pumping milk. Your body needs to replenish that. So do not be afraid to eat. I know so many women feel contrary about that because it's counterproductive to losing weight. Why would I eat more? No, I need to eat less. I need to be on a diet. You will not be feeding your baby if you do that. So if that's okay for you and you want to go on formula, that's one thing. But if you have a vision of breastfeeding your baby, keep that in mind and know that because your metabolism is going to be kickstarted, you're actually going to lose weight. And that's what happened for me. My body went into third gear, even though I only breastfed for 4 to 5 months. It did go into third gear and it started utilizing all the extra fat in the body and burning it because my metabolism was working so quickly to replenish the milk. It was also burning away the fat within my own body. It's amazing how our bodies are designed. So regarding letting your body heal and going back to pre-baby weight, I then had a significant event taking place almost at the 1 year postpartum mark that I started getting myself prepared for about 6 months in advance. And that was our wedding. We actually postponed our wedding because we got pregnant instead. So we started to plan for our wedding after the baby was born. And I didn't get myself into a workout routine until 6 months postpartum. So again, I took that time guilt free. And when I was ready, then I began. And I chose boxing because boxing is a total body workout. It's not isolating muscle groups, it's toning and it's shedding. So I did that for about 6 months in preparation for our wedding. Nothing like getting yourself back to where you want to be. I don't want to say pre-baby because it's not about pre-baby. It's just getting yourself to where you want to be. And like having a wedding, fitting in your dress. So that's what I did. I did it for maybe, 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, and then leading up to 4 days a week. I drank all the water, took all my supplements, did all the things, and we had an amazing wedding. So just don't be hard on yourself. Make decisions that you know are going to be guilt free. So the last thing you need is to feel guilty about your decision making as a new mom, as you're learning this new part of you, as you're learning your baby, as you and your spouse are re-engaging in your dynamic now as, mom and dad. It's not just you and him, it's mom and dad now, right? And so there's another layer adding on top of that, which the last thing I'll mention, it wasn't a question here, but I think it's very important to also talk about is what does this dynamic now look like between you and your spouse as new parents? So many new couples, or couples, I'll say, that become parents. So as your new parents together end up splitting or not being able to handle the stress of a newborn, because it does put an immense amount of pressure on the two of you. You will become different versions of yourself. Your sleeping patterns will be off. Your whole routines are going to be off. Everything changes when you have a child. Therefore, the dynamic between the two of you will change. But the one thing my husband and I did to remain close and ensure that we made each other a number one priority, because it's so easy to make the baby the number one priority. And you forget, without you and your spouse, that's the top line. That's the roof. Okay. Babies after you. Number one is you and your spouse. Number two is your children. So many parents make the mistake of putting their children number one above their spouse. And then you and your spouse are not on the same page. You are not as intimate with each other anymore for whatever reason, whether it's you not feeling sexy and desirable, or exhausted. That's very real, or, your spouse just being out of it because he's also exhausted, overworked, and other things. So ensuring that you're setting this time aside for each other, with each other, whether that's putting the baby on a consistent sleep routine once they're at that point where they can do that. So you have time back into your evening together, whatever it is that you can do to create that connection amongst the two of you, especially during the beginning when it's going to be so hard, will help you to get through it together and to not feel neglected, to not feel like your connection is lost or that your relationship is by the wayside. It still matters. It's still important. And that must be addressed. Otherwise, the baby will take over all 24 hours of the day. So have that conversation, do things for each other that, will make you feel loved and special. Maybe it's, pumping and having enough milk for the afternoon and the evening so you can enjoy a glass of wine together, or whatever that looks like. Maybe it's doing takeout so you don't have to cook. Maybe it's, having a family member, if you have support around you, or that babysitter you've been getting in touch with, come, once a month or twice a month, whatever that looks like, so you can have an evening to yourselves. Maybe it's working on your mindset to know that you are desirable. Your man still wants you and loves you no matter what shape your body is in or what condition your hair is in. And to feel that love and receive that still, even if your body is not what it used to be, or however you're feeling about that. Because most men, they just want to love you, and you have to receive that. I think a lot of times women are too hard on themselves. So that was something that we did. And I look back and I'm so grateful that we chose to do that, because we didn't have any issues in that department. We had the conversation. We're very cautious about keeping our relationship grounded and connected as the number one priority, even though we have a baby who is 100% reliant on us for everything. So how do we keep our relationship intact, even though we have this new dynamic coming in, right? Because men don't want to feel like they're being put on the wayside, even though they know a child is going to require a lot of work, time, and energy and output. You still want to make them feel special and part of everything, and vice versa. So you guys, I'm sending you so much love. I actually found this to be so beneficial to share. If you have any questions regarding motherhood, how it's been out of corporate and into entrepreneurship, especially starting a business with your spouse and wearing all the hats and doing all the things. I'd love to talk about that as well. Or if you want that to be like a his and her episode, we can certainly make that happen. But I hope this was extremely helpful. Again, these are the conversations that most of us aren't having, and this is the place for us to have them here so that you feel equipped. You know what you're getting yourself into. No stone is left unturned. All right. So I wish you an amazing rest of your day. You, if you're not already, will be an incredible mother. And just remember, your baby chose you, and you are more than qualified, more than capable, more capable than you think. So I am sending you so much love. If you love this episode, I'd love to hear some of your takeaways. What were things that really, really stood out to you that were like, whoa, that made me think of this in a completely different light? I'd love to hear what those things are. DM me. We can have a conversation about it. All right, you guys, have a great day, and I will chat with you again next week.